What's up, everybody? We are back for the 10th episode of Queen City Reds. The Reds are coming off a week. They won 3 out of 4 against the Marlins and lost 2 out of 3 against the Brewers because that's just what they do against the Brewers. Here with Paul, as always. Paul, how's it going on a Monday?
It's Monday, but we're getting close to football. So,
That's right. We're thinking about football season, which is not a good thing, but that's
yeah.
seems how it usually goes with the Reds season. I don't know. Maybe they can have a big week and we'll be back. Um, but we'll see. They kick things off against the Cardinals tonight in just a little bit here. Obviously, the game will probably be over by the time you guys start watching this. But just going over last week, the Reds won 3 of 4 against the Marlins. I think you and I ended last week's episode saying they needed a sweep. They didn't sweep. They'd won 3 of 4, which I think, yeah, you would take, I guess. But at this point, the Reds need it's not good
Yeah.
enough to just win series and you know be kind of around 500. They got to go on winning streaks, and
Yep.
then they followed it up with losing 2 or 3 of the Brewers. Um, just anything in particular for you or to you that stood out in any of those series? You start with the Marlins series, and then we'll go into the Brewers series, I
I
feel like.
mean, Elly in the Marlins series was that's one of the most impressive things in baseball, I think, ever. Back to back days with 4 hits, had like 7 doubles or something stupid. Just the guy is incredible. What's crazy is it's still his second year, not even his second full year, and just over one full year of baseball. And he amazes me every other day, basically, and the things he is able to do and that he's done this year and makes me really excited. Um, I know we've talked about it before, but please, please, Scott Boras, just get rid of him and then the Reds sign him. Please.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, the Marlins series, it was good to see them hit
Yeah.
for the most part, even against bad pitching. There's been plenty of times this year where the Reds have faced bad pitching and haven't hit the bad pitching. But Ellie's just unbelievable. I mean, he just goes on these little streaks that nobody else in baseball can go on. And then when he gets on base, he's just so electric and extra base hit machine. And we'll talk about it a little later, but the Reds basically go as he goes. And
Yeah.
he went in the Marlins series and it
Yeah, he
was
did.
fun to watch. And he's just ridiculous. And again, he's 22 years old. We've said it a million times. He's only going to get better.
Right.
It really is crazy to watch. And I think we take it for granted. But man, it's just, we're talking about, it's almost football season, but I will say every time I turn on the Reds, um, I'm so excited to watch Ellie um,
Same.
bat and play the field, and everything he does is just so much fun. So,
Uh-huh.
um, yeah, it was the Elly De La Cruz series in Miami. The one series they did lose, Andrew Abbott struggled, I believe. We'll talk about Abbott a little bit later.
Yeah.
Um, his struggles a little bit, but
Yeah,
correct
he
me if
gave
I'm
up
wrong on that. Was it Abbott's? Was it Abbott
yeah,
that
he gave
lost?
up the grand slam.
Yeah, that's right. First inning.
Yeah.
And then okay, then on to the Brewers, and this kind of goes into our next topic, so we'll kind of tie them into 2 and 1. But the Brewers, they go in just immediately. Willie Adames hits a home run on Friday. That guy absolutely kills the Reds. Immediately, the Reds are just down big, and you're like, here we go again. They've lost 9 straight series to the Brewers. It's something like 33 of 47 games or something like
Yeah.
that. I mean, I had no faith going into the series. I didn't even have my
No.
hopes up. Like people were like, "Well, if you have a good series against the Brewers," I was like, "It's not happening."
Yeah.
And it's right away. Friday night, we saw it. It was over immediately. Then Saturday, you get an absolute gem from Nick Martinez. I mean, what an effort by that guy.
Seriously.
A guy who's been asked to start after he's been in the bullpen most of the year, and he struggled starting at the beginning of the year. And man, what a signing Nick Martinez has been. I hope the
Yeah.
Reds can find a way to keep him. I'm sure he's going to opt out and see if they can keep him. If they don't keep him, I'm going to be really disappointed that the Reds didn't trade him because you just
Yeah.
lose him for nothing. But he's been awesome, and he throws a gem. And again, that was just one of those games where I'm watching and I'm like, the Reds offense isn't scoring. Like this is going to go bad. It's going to go bad. And Santillan comes in the 8th and gets 2 outs immediately, and then gives up a home run to Hoskins, and the Reds lose 1-0. And it's just It's crazy the amount of times the Reds have lost 1-0 or have not scored a run this year. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but it seems like
Yeah.
a million times where they haven't scored a run. Like have not scored a run, which is just crazy. And when the Reds score 4 runs or more, they're pretty good. I think they're like 49-18 or something like that. But 3 or less is pretty bad. And when you get a pitching effort like that, you have to be able to take advantage. And
Right.
they just did not take advantage. So that was the moral of that. And then they found a way to win yesterday,
Yeah.
which they were down 2-0, I think, early. Joey
Mhm.
Ortiz hit a really good pitch. I mean, Lodolo was down an inside curveball. It wasn't even a strike, and he hit it out of the park. And you're like, this is here we go again.
Here
And
we go.
the
Yeah.
Reds did battle back. Santiago Espinal had a pretty good game, which I don't think we put him on the topics, but he's probably someone we can talk about who's had a nice
Yeah.
bounce back year. I think some of the comments on Twitter lately are maybe some recency bias because he was pretty bad early in the year, but he has been playing well.
Yeah.
Um, and he was a big part of the win yesterday. Had a huge defensive play. Noelvi Marte played nice
Oh,
defensively yesterday. So anyway, just what were your thoughts on the Brewers series overall? It just seems like they
yeah.
have our number over and over again.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like, even when the Reds are playing well, it's the Brewers win, beat us. And Adamas, God, every game,
Every time.
every time. But Martinez, that probably his best outing of the year. At least it's up there for sure. He pitched amazing. Definitely his best start, I think. But I mean, that I know we're going to talk about it in a little bit about Elly, but that game 2, when they had 3 hits and only gave up 2 hits, the top 3 guys struck out 9 times.
Yeah.
They're not going to win, especially this season. If India, Stephenson, and Elly are striking out 9 times, they're not winning the game, you
Right.
know? And I know that happens and stuff, but that's usually when the rest of the offense is going to pick you up, and it's just not happening. And like you were saying, they have a ton of no run games. And on top of that, it seems like they have a ton of 2 or 1 run games too, on offense. That's why their record is so good, above 3 or 4 more runs, but their overall record isn't that good. But overall, it was about what I expected from the Brewers series. Obviously, I think the game 2 is basically the Red season in a nutshell. A game that you really, really needed to win. If you really want a chance, you pitch amazing and you lose.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's basically the season in a nutshell.
The Reds are
Uh,
10-21 in 1-run games. They won one yesterday. Alexis Diaz has had 16 straight saves, which is funny. I mean, he was the biggest talking point at one point
Question
this
mark.
season, and
Yeah.
he keeps doing it. Sometimes he makes it scary, but he's been getting the job done.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's just what's crazy is the Brewers series. The Brewers came out like they just swept the Braves and came on like their
Yeah.
offense had scored 7 million runs in the last like couple series. And they did that right away on Friday. And then Saturday, like you said, you hold them to 1 run and you lose. And then Sunday, yesterday, you held them to 3 runs and you win. But like, it's just that's what's frustrating is like this year's Brewers team. In the past, it was like they throw out Corbin Burns and the Reds wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to hit. They throw out Freddie Peralta, the Reds wouldn't be able to hit. But like, it's not like the Brewers were throwing aces out there. I mean, that
Yeah.
Tobias Myers, that guy was impressive. I mean, he looked really good. So I will. It's not like he's a batter by any means. I think he's been
Yeah.
incredible since the All-Star break.
Yeah,
But
I looked up. I After the game, I looked up his stats because he's a rookie, and I was like, oh, okay, so he's actually is having a pretty good season because I
yeah,
didn't know,
him
you
and
know.
Martinez. I mean, for the first like 5 innings, I was like, these
Yeah,
guys are painting the corners like I've never seen it. And
yeah,
but it's just frustrating because it's like, okay, the Brewers finally don't have pitching, and then the Reds go out and still they score what I don't remember how many runs they ended up scoring in the first game, 4 or 3. But
yeah,
they score 4, 0, and 4. So it's just whatever. It just doesn't matter. The Brewers always seem to do whatever it takes, and the Reds seem to lose. But it is what it is. At least they squeezed one out yesterday. It would have been a disaster if they got swept, I think. Take some momentum back home. They got a 6-game homestand, got the Cardinals and then the Royals, I believe,
yep.
face Sonny Gray tonight. So hopefully the Reds can bounce back. One of the things with the Reds' recent struggles is Jonathan India.
Mhm.
His OPS is like 400, I think, or something
Yeah.
like that in August. He struggled in July as well. I think it was 690 or something, 680 or something in July. It's crazy. India's season, he started out the year kind of struggling. Late May to middle of June or end of June, he was let the world on like or lit the world on fire.
Yeah.
And you're like, holy cow, Jonathan India is doing
Here
some
we
things.
go. Yeah.
And like it goes back to the whole reason, like we talked about, like, do you try to trade Jonathan India at his peak because you worry about him falling back down to earth? Now that being said, it's always hard to have those conversations because
Mhm.
you don't know what teams offered for Jonathan India.
Right.
Um, but man, I mean, when he was hitting like that, and the Reds seemed to at least have some spark at the top of the order besides Elly. And now I mean, he's striking out 37% of the time in
Yeah.
August, which is crazy high for him.
Yeah.
I mean, I almost feel like he's back to being too patient, where he's just looking at pitches like crazy. But he's still walking.
That's
I
how
think.
I felt. Oh, in the last 3 games, especially, just paying a little more attention to him, is that it's kind of going back to how he was at the beginning of the year, where he's like, he was doing so good, and then it was like his mindset just went to get on base,
Yeah,
and now it's I have to get on base by taking as many pitches. It's weird. It's just weird. I don't know. I just kind of feel like I agree with you 100%. He's being way too picky up there. And for him to strike out 37% of the time, that's nuts for him.
yeah. And I think when someone like him, I think he's trying to take the approach, which I kind of like it. But if you're if you're only hitting pitches that are in the heart of the plate,
Right.
you have to hit him every time. And I saw it a couple times in the Brewers series. He got a couple pitches on the corner, and he's kind of looking back at the ump. And I mean, they were strikes, but it's just when you're that patient, you gotta hit the pitches that are misses. And right now he's
Yeah.
not. And yeah, I think that's a big part of the Reds' offensive woes. I mean, they put him, they kept him at the top of the lineup when TJ Friedel came back,
Mhm.
and since then he's really struggled.
Yep.
So I almost think you need to swap those two around again.
I would
Just
agree.
do something different. I mean, you can't have the leadoff guy batting in front of India getting on base two every 10 times.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is I think one of the craziest things about Ellie's numbers is how low of RBI he has, because he should be getting plenty more. But obviously,
Reds don't get on baseball.
yeah, that's what it is. The rest of the team doesn't get on base.
Yeah,
So
it's crazy.
it's just
And
crazy.
it kind of feels like I don't want to feel like we're picking on India here. He
No,
was a big part of the middle of the season of when he was playing well.
definitely.
And there's more than just him not hitting. Like the whole team is not hitting for the most part. But it's just an interesting conversation with India because
Just the
literally a month
drastic
ago,
changes.
yeah, and a month ago we were talking about like he's he's figured it out. He's playing as good as
Yeah.
he's ever played, and then now he's been really bad in August. But the Reds need him to hit, so we'll see. I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see the Reds offseason with Jonathan India. I mean, there's going to be more trade rumors. Just is what it is. The Reds offseason is going to be wild. How much do you trust the young core? Obviously, I don't think you can just say we're going to go with this core going forward and not go get anybody. But
Yeah.
that's a whole nother conversation that we can talk about. But the Reds offseason is going to be interesting. I'm sure Jonathan India's name is going to be a part of that. On to Andrew Abbott. He has really struggled over the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 starts now.
Yeah.
He's not even giving any length really. I'm not sure. I feel like I need to watch his start a little bit more closely tonight and like really paying attention to the pitches he throws. What's weird is he's walking a ton of guys.
Mhm.
He used to, get a ton of swing and misses on the fastball. I'm not sure. It just feels like guys are figuring him out, or he's just not as sharp. But again, I think we've mentioned this briefly before. Last year, late in the season, he had the same exact thing happen, and I'm not sure if he's just getting tired again, throwing so many innings. He had such a good first half of the year, and now it's just he takes the mound, and you're not exactly confident things are going to go well. I don't know. What are your thoughts on what we've seen from Abbott over the last 5 or 6 starts?
I would say, just especially like with the lower percentage of swing and miss on his fastball, I would put it to one, teams probably are figuring out him out a little bit, but I think a lot of it probably is his stamina. I mean, he's thrown a lot of innings this year. Um, he's I'm not sure the numbers, but it's got to be up there for his most innings in a season, I would guess. Um,
Yeah, keep going. I'll look it up while you're talking.
and so I think when you that to me says he probably just doesn't have it right now at this point in the season. He's tired, his arms worn out, and it just doesn't have as much has he doesn't have as much zip on his fastball and as much command. And he probably knows it. So then he's trying to place all of his pitches perfect. And that's what's going to happen when you get to the end of the season and your arm's tired.
Yeah, so he threw in 2000. I'm trying to find out what he did in 2023 in the minors because he came up
Yeah.
beginning of the year last year. All right, so
Yeah, like May or
minors,
something.
in the minors last year, he threw 54 innings, and then he threw 109 in the majors, so
So
163.
163.
He's thrown 126 this year, so
Oh,
it's probably going to be about the same, I would guess,
yeah.
maybe a little less. But yeah,
So
I mean,
that's,
yeah,
I
go ahead.
guess, then it's like you said, the same kind of thing that happened last year. So then, going into this off season, or even right now, doing some extra things to overcome that. It's clearly 2 years in a row now. This time of the year, he's kind of fallen off a little bit. Whether that be mental, it could be mental too. It's a long season, but I think probably it's his arm is just not as fresh. So I think just something to work on in the offseason, somehow building that arm so that he is able to pitch those innings every season or more.
Yeah, and one thing with him is the home run is killing him. He's given up a ton of home
Yeah.
runs. He gave up
Yeah.
16 last year. He's given up 24 already this year, which
Oh
leads
wow.
Major League Baseball.
Hmm.
A lot of them seem to be solo shots for whatever reason when he gives them up. Obviously, the grand slam was not a solo shot last time
Yeah.
out, but that's killer. I mean, when you give up, I think that's just he's so fastball heavy when he gets misses his spot, and especially when you're pitching up in the zone. I think the Cowboy talks about that a lot. Is if you pitch up in the zone and you miss your spot, like it's going to get hit a long way.
Yeah.
The rest of his stats aren't too crazy off from last year. I mean, he gives up 8.2 hits per nine last year, 8.3 this year, 3.6 walks per nine last year, 3.5 this year. His strikeout numbers are down 9.9 last year, 7.4 this year.
Hmm.
So that could be, again, guys are just figuring him out or
Yeah.
um, something along those lines. But yeah, it's just an interesting. I think he was never as good as he was pitching in the beginning of the year. I don't think Abbott is ever going to be like a
No.
I mean, he had almost a sub 3 ERA at point. I don't think that's the kind of pitcher he is. He's probably more of a maybe a 3, like probably more close to like a 4 or 5, I
4.
think.
Yeah.
Um, so I think maybe part of it's just coming down to earth, but it's just been consistently bad for a while now that
Yeah.
just worth talking about. Hopefully he can bounce back tonight.
I think that's the
Um,
biggest thing is the consistency thing because a lot of times it seems like with Abbott, if he has a bad start, he would come back the next time, and
right.
it's just he just hasn't done that these last few starts.
Yeah, 100%. Well, hopefully by the time you guys are watching this,
Yeah,
Abbott
hopefully he's pitching a
just threw a
gem.
gem and we don't have to worry about him anymore. And we can look like idiots for saying what's wrong with Andrew Abbott. Um, all right, on to the next topic. We talked about this a little bit, but I threw a tweet up there not too long ago. The Reds go as Elly De La Cruz goes, which is pretty crazy. He's 22 years old, so to carry that offensive burden, it's crazy. I mean, we need other guys around him to hit. Now, I'm sure you could go and look at a lot of guys' stats, and their stats are better in wins and losses, but Ellie's is crazy. It's very drastic. So he's slashing 333, 415, 648, with an OPS of 1.064 in wins. And in losses, he's slashing 192, 285, 335 with this OPS of 619, which is exactly what we're talking about. Again, we just
Yep.
talked about how good Elly was in the Marlins series, and the Reds went and won 3 or 4. Yeah, the Marlins stink, but they still won 3 or 4. And then Elly didn't really do much at all in the Brewers series. He got on base a couple times, at least once yesterday, maybe
Yeah.
twice. And the Reds won, but the first 2 games of the series, I don't think he had a hit. It
Mhm.
just seems like when Elly plays good, the Reds seem to win. When Elly plays bad, the Reds seem to lose. And it's just crazy that this team is so reliant on a
Mhm.
22-year-old Elly De La
Yeah,
Cruz who's in his second, not even second full year in the league to play good, great, or you're not in position to win. And I'm not sure. I think all that does is just show how bad a lot of
this,
the offense has been.
yeah,
But yeah, what are your takes on just the Reds seem to
yeah.
go how it goes?
That's I mean, just we've talked about it plenty, but there's not another guy to step up. There hasn't been that extra, it doesn't have to be all the time like him, but when he's struggling, that's when the other guys have to be able to step up and hit, and read I've seen a few people tweet about how needing the Reds offseason, if they're not moving guys a lot, then they need to make a splash in the they need to get, obviously, the Jamer signing hasn't worked out so far, but the greatest, but making a move for a hitter, think is a huge thing. And I think they're very stuck on position mentality. But to me, in a way, it's almost like you kind of got to just get your best available hitter at this. They need offense. I'm not sure it really matters what position. Obviously, probably not a shortstop, but for the most part, I think you
Yeah,
find anybody that,
it seems like an outfield power bat is a no-brainer. I mean, right
yeah,
now it's not working out with you have Jake Fraley who's not hitting for power. You have Will Benson who's struggling. You have Spencer Steer playing out there some, who he's even been inconsistent. You have Fairchild playing against lefties. Okay, fine. It's just all over the place. There's no consistent, pop out there,
yeah,
which kind of just going into that, I think is you have Jake Fraley and you have Will Benson. I mean, the Reds played Will Benson, I think, one in the last 4 games, one in the last
yeah,
3 games against right-handed pitching, which is pretty interesting. I don't know if they're just like they're just playing Ty France against righties and lefties, which Ty France has actually looked pretty good.
yeah,
He's hit the ball pretty hard and has had at least one home run I know last week. And I don't know if it's just we've kind of seen what we've seen from Will Benson, and we're going to go with the guys that we think is going to win. With that being said, Espinal is not in the lineup tonight, and he's been hitting incredible.
yeah,
But it is against the righty, so Espinal over his career doesn't hit righties very well. So I get it. Um, but yeah, I think that's you can't just bank on, hey, next year Fraley and Benson are going to be better. You
right,
would like to think they're going to be better. Like Fraley's been a little bit better since the All-Star break. He's still not hitting for much power, and Benson is just it's alarming. I'm officially worried about Benson. I mean,
yeah,
he just is not hitting
no,
at all, and that's a huge part of the offense. I mean, last year he seems like he's like a almost just a power. Like if he hits one, it's going to be a home run at this point.
yeah,
And like last year, he hit like 275 last year, which is just
right,
I don't know what happened to that Will Benson, but. I'm with you. I mean, we need some kind of power bat out there. And then
yeah,
just one more guy I want to talk about on here while um, we're talking about the Reds' offensive struggles.
mhm.
Um, Noelvi Marte, we talked about him last week. I think we said the approach was bad. I think I said when I can notice something's wrong, something's probably wrong.
Right,
And then that game against the Marlins, he had an opposite field home run, which I literally texted you
yeah,
and it was like, dude, we just talked about this. Um, he looked pretty good in the Marlins series,
hmm,
not quite as good in the Brewers series. But I do like what I'm seeing from Marte. Almost even as much as I'm liking seeing him hit the ball hard, he's he's a whole nother guy defensively. I mean,
oh
when he
yeah,
started playing defensively, he had the yips at third base.
yeah,
We were all like, he's going to be an upgrade over Candy, and then he couldn't throw to third from third base to first base. And in the Brewers series and the Marlins series, he's just made some phenomenal plays. And I know the Cowboy talked about in the Brewers series how much work he's been putting in on that. So I think that's good to see. Again, with the Reds kind of out of contention unless they make a big run. Like Marte is going to be probably one of the biggest guys I'm paying attention to.
hmm,
He's hasn't even played a year in the majors. Like you just need to keep seeing positive things from him. He's
yeah,
going to have some bad streaks. He's going to have some good streaks. But as long as you see some of the good things start to happen, like he's going to hopefully get more and more consistent. But just
yeah.
what have you seen from Marte over the last week since we kind of talked about him last
Yeah,
week?
especially the Marlins series. It's mostly because we had just talked about it. last week, you could tell it was almost like he did make a change to his approach because he was like you said, hit the ball, hit a homer to opposite field. I saw him get at least two more hits to the opposite field, and all of his hits were hard. He was hitting
He
the making solid contact,
Yeah,
and
he even had a couple outs in the series that were smoked right at guys.
yeah, right. And I think probably part of that is probably him getting confidence on defense because that's probably going into when he was coming up for us, we said that's the part that we're looking forward to because he is good defensively. So then him struggling defensively probably made his offense even worse.
Yeah, just
You know,
pressing and pressing and
yeah,
pressing.
just pressing and pressing. So being good defensively and relaxing out there is probably gonna help him at the plate. He doesn't have to worry about making an error as he's up there up to bat. And I think just like you said, that's a guy with being if they're going to be out of contention, which they'll probably win tonight to get to 3 games under and then lose the next two. But
That's what they do. That's what they do. They just refuse to get back to 500. They refuse to really even get to two under 500.
yeah, but for the next month or so, that's definitely just making improvements and having quality at bats. I'm not looking at numbers necessarily. It's just about going up there and getting better and really putting in the time and the effort and having good quality at bats for him is huge.
Yeah,
You know,
I 100% agree. And I know there's some people saying on X that, hey, why is Espinal not in the lineup? Marte should be in AAA, blah, 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 blah. But like, I don't know. Maybe it's because I've pretty much sold the season. Maybe I
yeah,
shouldn't. I mean, I feel like I had said 20 series in a row that this is a huge series for the Reds. This is a huge series for the Reds. And then I'm like, the Reds just are what they are at this point. I don't, they literally need to win like 7 straight to get in contention. Because they're, I think 4.5 back or something, and
yeah,
they have a bunch of teams in front of them. So it's more about how many teams you have in front of them than just a game because you need all those
right,
teams to lose.
yeah,
So maybe I'm just I punted on the season already, and I would say like I value Noelvi Marte being part of the future more than I value Santiago Espinal getting some at bats. And again, Espinal's been awesome. I don't want to
mhm,
discredit him. He was a huge part of the Brewers win yesterday. He's been really good defensively. Um, but at the end of the day, like we know who Santiago Espinal is against
exactly,
right-handed pitching. Like he's just he's not a very good hitter against right-handed pitching over his career. So I don't want to just be like he's played good for a week, just keep putting him in there
right,
and put Marte on the bench. And we talked about this before with Marte, but also like when he's in AAA, I'm not sure he has a ton to prove in AAA either. So I would just like to keep getting him major league at bats. But I do get people that say Espinal gets you the best chance to win today.
yep,
Yeah, I get it. I could probably get behind that argument, but maybe
yep,
I've punted on the season. So I think that Marte, again, we're on the same page with Marte. We both just want to
yep.
see him um, play well every day. One more thing I wanted to talk to. I didn't tell you about this topic, but you can talk to it. Tyler Stephenson. Well, I was looking at the lineup tonight, and just going down the lineup real quick. You have Steer, who's really struggled lately. You have Elly, who is Elly. You have Ty Steve. David Bell just keeps putting third in the lineup because he's been playing that well. You have Friedel, who's starting to play a little bit better. Jamie Candelario has been very inconsistent.
Mhm.
Not great as of late. It feels like he's hit 1 home run in like the last month.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Ty France has been decent since he was back. Fraley, we talked about him. Marte, we talked about him, and Benson, we talked about him. So you're just looking at that lineup, and you're like,
yeah.
But I mean, Tyler Stevenson is a guy I joked about on Twitter, and I think I even said at the end of last year, like, um, for last year to give the Reds the best chance to win at the end of the season, Luke Maile was hitting the ball better than Tyler
Yeah.
Stevenson. Now, I was never one to be like, Luke Maile should be the starter going forward. I think
Yeah.
Tyler Stevenson just had a rough year coming off an injury
Mhm.
last year. Um, but what he has done, man, he's had such a bounce back, such a good bounce back season. He has
Oh
career
yeah.
high 15 home runs. He's hitting the ball hard. Um, it's just been awesome. It's been an
Mhm.
awesome bounce back year for him. I mean, the thing with catchers, we talked about it, I think before, but like you don't have to be great to be a good hitting
No.
catcher. Like there's not very many good hitting catchers out there. So if you're average to above average, you're going to be a really good hitting catcher. And
Yep.
Stevenson just continues to play well. And I think we talked about like why is Stephenson sitting so much? I think he sat one time in the last week, so
Yeah.
they keep just flinging him out there. He played on a Sunday yesterday, which I almost just dropped out of
And
my
they won
bed,
the game.
and they won the game. That's right. So, just what have you seen from Stevenson? I think he's probably one of the cooler stories on the
Yeah.
season of just the bounce back year he's had.
I think obviously like his offensive numbers, that's awesome because 2 years ago before he got hurt, we saw the flashes of it, hitting the
He
ball
was
hard.
legit, like could have been like an all-star catcher that year he got
Yep.
hurt.
Yep. And barreling the ball. He's doing that again this year at a really high rate. And I love Tyler Stevenson's approach to the game. He works hard, clearly. And I think one of the coolest things about his numbers this year is his defensive numbers are and his frame rate are like top of the charts. And that was never something that he had was the defensive ability as much as any of the other catchers the Reds have had, especially, you go from Tucker to Stevenson on the defensive end. That was definitely a noticeable difference. But this year, just throwing guys out is a big thing. And for Stevenson, because he doesn't throw that many guys out, at least coming into the year. And I think that's really cool. And, like you said, offensively, like any decent hitting guy that is a catcher is a really good hitting catcher. And I know it's probably partly because of the rest of the Reds offense, but to have him at third, hitting third in the lineup, and it actually is a viable option at third, like it makes sense to have him hitting third. That's cool. If you can have your catcher hit third in the lineup, that's usually a really good sign.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree. And I do agree defensively. I think with catchers, it's almost like if you notice them defensively, something's wrong. And
Yeah.
we haven't really noticed. I don't think he's like elite. He's not ever going
No,
to be an elite defensive
no.
catcher. But you've noticed him back there much less,
Yeah.
which is such a positive thing. He's made such big improvements back there. So, good things all around. But that's it for this week's episode of Queen City Reds. Appreciate you all following, like, subscribe, comment, and do all of the above. The Reds have got Sonny Gray tonight. I'll leave you with a fun fact, Paul.
All
Sonny
right.
Gray is one of three teams, or the Reds are one of three teams that Sonny Gray does not have a win against in his major league
Ooh.
career. So let's hope they keep it that way tonight. The Reds
Yeah.
scored, I think, 6 runs against them in St. Louis earlier in the year, because that's what this team does. Just when you think, Sonny Gray's pitching, they're not going to hit, and here they come with 6 runs.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what to expect. I don't have any expectations.
No.
We'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next Monday. Go Reds.
Go Reds.